One member on their way, and Joel is attending via phone. So our first item is to call to order and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and the flags are over this way.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the reading of the school board norms. Josh?
Our school board norms are: be prepared, be on time, value and respect each other, exercise thoughtful deliberation and conversation, be professional at the board table and when visiting with the general public, speak up when the norms are not being followed, and advocate on behalf of students and keep the community in mind.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion for approval? Motion by Bill. Is there a second? Second by Monty. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is celebrating success, and we have the fine folks from Viking Elementary School. So go ahead and take it away.
Well, thank you for having us. I'm Jolynn Bergstrom, principal at Viking Elementary School, and I have a fine group of my staff here. They're probably the talent behind all this celebration here, so they're here to share some things with you as well. I'll start us off right now. We were talking about our goals in the beginning of the fall. We worked, the district had set their goals already with the increase of ELA and math proficiency by 5%. We talked about that goal within our group. We also broke into grade level groups to discuss what other goals we might want in our school that were more tailored to us. And we all gave feedback back, and we decided we would go ahead with the district goal and pattern our first goal after that with the 5% growth or proficiency. We wanted to develop a common language for social emotional learning, which is important in our school. We've really spent a lot of time getting to know our kids, listening to them, because like we know, behavior is a form of communication. And we wanted to be able to go from kindergarten to 5th grade using those same SEL words like zone of regulation, what is your mood right now, what are you feeling, different things. And then we also wanted to improve attendance in our subgroups. We noticed that different subgroups had a lot of critical attendance issues in years previously. So those were the 3 goals that we had decided on. We're going to give you this wonderful star data here. It's our kindergarten celebration, and I even have one of the kindergarten teachers here. We have 3. Miss Ramlow is in the back there. And we do have small class sizes in our kindergarten class this year. We were lucky enough, Viking wasn't bursting at the seams, and we were able to have a little bit smaller kindergarten classes. But look at that. If you look at that first screen in CBM reading, and it was with letter and sounds, we had a big group coming in, maybe even knowing 3 sounds when they first started kindergarten. And then if you look at the green. That's where we're at now. We totally flipped the red to the green. So then you can also look at the next one. I guess it was letter sounds. Next one is the letter naming. Once again, huge growth. So we celebrate our kindergarten teachers. They're doing amazing. It shows like if you stay consistent with the curriculum that we have purchased for really great reading. The kindergarten team also developed their own video to teach letter sounds, and they have the actions made for it, letter sounds and actions from the really great reading. And they would play that every morning. They'd be consistent, and they kept doing that until the kids would learn that. They also taught the really great reading curriculum, added all the additional supplemental lessons. They taught Haggerty, small group instructions. They tailored it to what each student needed, so they got additional practice in their classroom with those kids that needed the extra boost. And then our intervention team also met with kindergarten teachers, and they discussed and collabed on what those lower students really needed, so they got a third dose of what they needed in kindergarten. So if we go to the next screen, it's just kind of a comparison throughout the district, and Jessica got this data for us. So you're looking, most of the students across our whole district coming in the red. And look at Viking there, we were one of the lowest in the red coming into kindergarten, and we had the most growth for the district, which I'm pretty proud of because we're a Title I school and we're competing with the non-title schools here with the success we're having in kindergarten. So very proud. That was a huge celebration for our school as we're looking at the kindergarten data. Then we took the data of reading and math, CBM proficiencies, so it's overall here, we're looking at the STAR data. And once again, if you look at our measure of proficiency in reading, our red has gone down, our green is up, green's good, red we want to diminish, and we have that in both reading and math. So our teachers have done a really excellent job here teaching the Tier 1 curriculum, getting to know their students, putting in additional time, and then I can't say enough for our intervention team, Lisa Spicer as our literacy specialist, Britta Zimmer as our math specialist, and Samantha Thompson as our IC. They've added support in classes, areas that needed help. Britta Zimmer found that we need a little more extra help in our math facts. She found various things for the students to do even in the morning. So they're practicing before school when they have some downtime, when they're waiting to get into their classrooms, and they're practicing some of those facts. Our next slide. This is really what's telling you that what we're doing in the classroom is working. The first screen where you see the first kindergarten class, the first class, and then the second is where we're at now. So kindergarten came in red there. There's our growth. You see that with first grade. Everything came in below where they needed to be, and then except our fifth grade. And you can see the growth of each grade level. So that's really telling us. Medium scores help us to know how to intervene with our students and if our Tier 1 instruction is working. Red is the intervention, blue is on watch, and green is your average. All our medium CBM reading scores now fall in the green, where in the fall only one was at the green. Here too, once again, if you're looking across the district, we're pretty proud here. We have third grade and we have a fourth grade comparison of where we're at. As a Title I school, we are happy to see this. A lot of our families don't have the resources at home or the experiences for their kids due to low economics. So we have some challenges too to get those supports in place for those kids that maybe haven't had a book, haven't had a vacation, haven't had other things that other kids have had in their background. And just really working with them, making them feel comfortable at Viking School, making sure they know that they belong. And here's an example of how well we're doing with that. How do we get some of this done? This is the collaboration that creates success. Like I said, I have my team of interventionists there to support classroom teachers. When we get together to collab, this is what we're really looking at. We're looking at the data of our students. Where are they at? What does each individual student need? How can we group them? What are they missing? So we will get together. This is an example of second grade classroom. We're talking about what is the classroom, teachers' plan in supporting those students, what are they working on, and then should they go to Lisa Spicer's group, what are they going to be working on there, and what is the special ed staff doing. So we really are wrapping around our students with the supports and needs that they really need. So it's been just working really fabulous to have this collaboration and everyone willing to be accountable for every student and their learning at Viking. And then just to jump over to our next celebration, which was our next goal, was some SEL survey. Yeah, I don't think you can get the academics where you are at Viking without the relationships and the belonging of our students and the supports and love and care we give to the students. So this was nice to support that you can't get anywhere with academics without really caring for the kid and understanding them. This is a 3 through 5 SEL survey that's given every year in the fall. And here we are sitting, this is a student survey. And if you look, it's grade 3 through 5. And you can see teacher-student relationships, we're at 80%. They feel good about that. Sense of belonging, 79%. School climate, 76%. And we've continued to raise these scores. School safety, 74. And engagement is a big one. We increased that. And I think willing to do the work if it's engaging to the students is important. Here's just the growth over the last 2 years with our school climate. Engagement, once again. Student well-being measures, as you can read up there. This is, again, students are rating where they feel. Supportive relationships, students are saying they feel very supported, 96%. Self-management, how can they take care of things themselves? How do they remain calm? How do they work through frustrating situations? 79. Social awareness, positive feelings, 78. Self-efficacy, 65. Challenging feelings, 60. And emotional regulation, 59. So they're feeling pretty good about themselves. We're getting them the tools that they need to do well. And then one other goal, and let me state one more thing. I didn't include this slide, and I should have, and it might be in your packet because I updated my Google Slides. I forgot to put in the faculty SEL measurements, 2023 Fall Staff Wellbeing Survey. And this would be when you're looking at retention, I think, within your building, is dependent on how your teachers feel within your building. And in that survey, there were 5 marks, and one was staff leadership relationships. It was at 100%. School climate for teachers was at 84%. Well-being was 76%. Professional learning about the SEL was at 61%. And then the faculty growth mindset was at 40%. So that kind of shows the teachers' survey went right along with our student surveys. This is our third goal, was improvement in attendance of the subgroups. I'm sorry I didn't put the percents on here. It's kind of hard to follow the line over. But we did have some improvement. For our first section there, Black, we did not get as big an improvement yet. We still have time. Last year it was 14% chronically absent. Right now we're at 19%. Hispanic, last year 43% were chronically absent. We're down to 33%. Our biggest one, and one that was very high last year, so we took a lot more effort at reaching out to our Native American students. Last year, 62% of our Native American students were chronically absent. We are sitting at 23%. So we're making that happen. And with white, 15% last year, 14% currently. Our other celebrations within our school, celebrating our students, we have different clubs, we have intramurals, we have VEX clubs in both 2nd and 3rd and 4th and 5th. Our librarian has ELBA class awards going, and we have a running celebration of students with their pictures meeting each division. And it's kind of competition too, because some of the teachers are competing against the students, so they're always waiting to see which teacher's picture's up there and who they can beat as far as a teacher. We have student leaders. That's a pretty prideful job at Viking. They are a safety patrol, and with AAA, we're usually always honored every year to have a good safety patrol out there helping at the crosswalks. They're just good role models within our school. It's wonderful to see 5th graders helping out other students that might be struggling in the morning drop-offs, and they're always there. The next one was videos. I hadn't read the instructions, go figure. Not me. So I'm just going to have, we had in our videos, we had Tracy Mahar talking about how she feels it is going at Viking with families that she reaches out to. We also had Joan Hoos, a 1st grade teacher, showing a little video clip of a lesson she was teaching and reading. So I'm going to let Joan Hoos and Lisa Spicer come up here and kind of talk through how they work together in the teaching of their students in 1st grade.
Hi, I'm Lisa Spicer.
And I'm Joan Hoos, and I wish we could, I think you guys were sent the video in your email, is that right?
Yeah,
Joanna?
it should be in the link.
You need to watch that because you do see the students and it's just kind of fun to hear from the teachers, so I really would like you to do that. I basically just said in mine, I've taught for a very long time, right, Dr. Brenner, 28 years, and all those years, a missing piece. And I've always been primary, K1 and 2. A missing piece was always that phonics piece. And we were trying to just find anything to fit in. And when we adopted really great reading, it has changed everything. It's changed our interventions, our teaching. That was such a missing link to our classroom instruction.
And what it helps now is that what Joan teaches in her 1st grade classroom, and when my intervention team comes in, we have the same language going back and forth. So it's not necessarily we can use the same materials, but we don't have to. And we have plenty of resources and measures to really target what skill it is that they don't have, so we can teach to that deficit and to bring that student up. And so everybody's kind of getting what they need, and I think that has a response in the kids' feeling towards school, because they feel confident that they can experience success no matter where they're at, so they can get there.
So, yes, so yeah, that's.
We just collaborate a ton. I mean,
Right.
Joan will be running down in my room like, Lise, what do I do with this? You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's constant.
Right.
And we have meetings once a month, bring everybody in. We look at the data points. The intervention team goes out and screens kids once a week. And we are constant watching for that growth. If it's not there, we're making changes and doing what we can to support.
The screenings are huge. The interventionists are huge. That has been a big piece that I've seen in all my years. And the really great reading. Those are just, I think, key pieces to our instruction right now that are making it successful. And I just want to give another shout out because our school is amazing.
Yes.
If you come by, it really is. It's a feel good.
It
The
is.
morale among our staff is phenomenal. It's a great school.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just sprung that on them when, 5 minutes ago, so thank you for coming up and talking. Our social worker, Tracy Mahar, she's very valuable in our school. She takes a wraparound approach to our students and their families, and she really makes connections and making sure that everyone knows they have a place at Viking. A yearly event she has started is the Unity Day, where in October we make the Unity Pledge that everyone belongs, and we are accepting of everyone. This is just a little picture capturing that. And then she has always started the end of the year annual chalk block. And what it has started out with was trying to get community members and families all together around the block of Viking to show our pride and our connectedness. And this was last year's picture. We had a great turnout. We had several people. We had people from Blue Zone. We had the mayor. We had the SROs. We had fire department. We had a lot of mascots coming and visiting with our kids. And it's just really a feel-good day for families and community members and the kids to have time outside. So I don't think this was an 80-degree day, but it was probably close. So I think that comes to the end. I want to thank you for having us, and we are open to any questions you might have.
Any questions for our folks at Viking? Well, I'll share a quick little story. I think Miss Ramlow was my daughter's kindergarten student teacher, and so it's really cool to see 5 years ago. So it's cool to see we have our student teachers stay, but we did intro to kindergarten at Viking, and Mrs. Palmasino came out of retirement to be one of the teachers there, and so that kind of jump-started our school experience, and so it was really neat to see the Viking culture and everyone getting together. We were in the lunchroom, and I think probably 5 parents around me were Viking alumni, and they were like, we moved to where we are living now because we wanted our kids to go to Viking. So it's neat to see this kind of historical, people love Viking. So it's cool. Go ahead, Cynthia.
So I will ask a question. Your data was impressive in terms of reading and math. Just out of curiosity, what do you attribute the great jump in attendance in the different groups?
With the attendance, like with our Native American group was one that we were really targeting. So we wanted to make sure that they had a reason to come to school. So we really connectedness with a team of adults that were there. We even have a teacher that would provide a snack at the end of the day for them to take on the bus. So it really built they really care about us. Also, too, those peer relationships, we were able to get some more of those going a little stronger within our groups and stuff too, and just different activities that we've been doing. But if you ever come through the door and if one student is sitting at the bench or something, not getting to class, kind of feeling, down about coming into school, I bet you I could count 12 adults that will come by and say, hey, are you okay? What are you doing? Can I walk you to class? Do you want to go, have a talk? Do you want to go do this? And I think really just the connectedness of our teachers realizing their class students aren't the only students they're responsible for. They're looking out for all the kids in the school building. And like I said, it wasn't even, here's an example, because one group of kids, there was probably 3 or 4 of them, if they would have missed the bus last year, they would have stayed home. This year, they ended up walking, and it's a little bit of a walk. And when we saw them walk through the door, we were really surprised and shocked and so happy that they wanted to be at school. So I think building those relationships.
Any other questions? Okay, you're more than welcome to stay for the entirety of the school board meeting, but I will give you an out and we'll let you shuffle out while we go to our next item. Mm-hmm. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion for approval? Motion by Dr. Lunn. Is there a second? Second by Jeff. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is the public comments. I don't see any blue cards. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak? Okay. Superintendent's recommendations for discussion. There are none at this time, so we will move on to the superintendent's recommendations for action. Consent agenda. Do I have a motion for approval? Motion by Bill. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Josh. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll now move on to item B, contracted staff resignation and request for release from contract. Dr. Brenner?
Thank you, Madam President. Page 29 of your packet, there's a memo from me regarding the resignation letter from Amber Haskell, who's a special education teacher at Kelly Elementary School. She's resigning effective January 12th, which is pretty much in the near future, to take another position as the North Dakota United Northeast Field Consultant. I think we've been through this before, so I'll just skip over the next two paragraphs. And it's the administrative recommendation to approve her resignation effective January 12th, 2024, with the 5% liquidated damages under policy DKBB. Thank you.
Do I have a motion for approval? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Dr. Lund, second by Dave. Is there any discussion? Go ahead.
Just one question. Remind me where the Therapeutic Learning Center is.
Kelly?
Thank you. It's on Altru's main campus, so it is, I don't know the official name of the building, but it's in the backside of occupational health and behavioral health, and they've had to move locations over Christmas for a temporary spot, but as the rebuild occurs, we're going to have a renovated space for that Therapeutic Learning Center at Altru.
Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll now move on to item C, 7th and 8th grade English language arts adoption.
Madam President, members of the board, thank you for having us here this evening. I'm here with the wonderful Carla Haven, and we'll talk a little bit about written wisdom today. So, let's get that ready. Okay. So first, whenever we do an adoption, our goal is always inclusion, to include as many teachers, instructional coaches, administrators as we can in the process to get a variety of perspectives. This is the team that was part of the piloting this time around. And then I'll highlight a little bit of the adoption process. I'll go a little faster than normal because we did this last year. So if you have any questions, please stop me and I'm happy to clarify at any point. So this was a secondary curriculum exploration. So when we started, we did this adoption a little bit on the unique side. We started with 6th grade. The reason why we highlighted 6th grade is within our middle schools for English language arts, there was a lack of resources. So teachers had produced their own resources, and our student outcomes, as we've all shared before earlier this year, weren't where we wanted them to be. So we had to start examining what are those barriers. One of the barriers that we noted was the lack of a guaranteed and viable curriculum throughout our middle school within English language arts. So we took the opportunity within ESSER dollars to start the exploration of a curriculum resource for ELA. So what we did is first we went to regional curriculum fairs, and all of those fairs, it's really important to note, were aligned with the science of reading, concepts of best practices within teaching reading. The other thing that we did is we, of course, talked with vendors. What options do you have? What resources do you have available? From that, we looked in 6th grade at 2 resources, Amplify, CKLA, and then Wit and Wisdom. And then we came to you, we showed you the resource for Wit and Wisdom, and then you all approved that adoption. So this is the second phase of now a unique journey. Typically, we don't adopt one grade at a time. And so now it's time to look at how do we have that continuation of learning and opportunity for kids to experience that curricular resource now in grade 7 and then on to grade 8. So we did the pilot in the fall of 22 for 6. This fall, we've been looking at 7th grade, and that says fall and spring because what we'd like to do is jumpstart the professional learning for our 8th grade educators to get their hands on the resource yet this year so they have additional opportunity to explore and become familiar with the resource as we go into next year. So this is our review process. I kind of highlighted it already, is to first look at what do our North Dakota state standards require of us, what resources align with those requirements, how do we review for a number of components including optimal student engagement, how does it align to a scope and sequence that's reasonable, part of guaranteed and viable. The viable part means that we can do it in the time allotted. Then also review for accurate representation of all people. We're going to review multiple forms of assessment and review the overall content. So then the selection process, this was again unique, not the typical way. It was almost a continuation of that 6th grade adoption. So going into 7th grade, looking at, Carla did a beautiful job this fall, making sure that they had the introduction and professional development necessary to dive into the resource. Because one thing that I'll say is when we change from balanced literacy, a way of immersing kids in language and making an assumption by that immersion that they're going to learn to read and comprehend, to the science of reading where we have to take deliberate, systematic steps in order to ensure they have not only the opportunity, but we guarantee it through the instruction that we provide. That's not easy. That's like asking me tomorrow to go run a marathon. I'm going to make it around a couple blocks, but probably not going to make it around the whole marathon. It takes a lot of support, a lot of training, a lot of trial, a lot of error. When we make big shifts like this within practice, it's inevitable that there are going to be hiccups, that there are going to be hurdles, that there are going to be barriers, not only for our students, but our teaching staff too. When you embark on a change like this, it's uncomfortable. And when you become uncomfortable, you want to default to what you know, what feels comfortable. And no one's doing that to not provide students the best opportunity that they know. It's just, it becomes so uncomfortable that you want to go back to those old practices. And what we know from our student achievement data is things like novel studies followed by packets or projects was reaching about 40 to 50% of our students. And we were leaving about half of our kids in a position where we were not providing the explicit, systematic instruction that they needed to be skilled readers. So as we go forward and we have hurdles like this, I know that you've all been reached out to, that there are concerns about the difficult part of implementing wit and wisdom. It's not easy. How it's hard for students to make a transition from a balanced literacy system to a structured literacy. All of that is part of typical growth and change. And as we go through the last slide where we ask you to look at the expenditure, one thing I want you to highlight is that proposed professional learning budget line, because this isn't easy. If it were easy, everybody would do it, and everyone would have 100% proficiency, and we'd all be dancing in a circle. But this is hard work, because teaching kids to become skilled readers with decoding and language comprehension is a lot of work, and that's why we continually want to provide that professional learning and support to do the work. So Carla's going to step in, and she surveyed some teachers and students and just wants to share a little snippet, one perspective of what they're saying.
And again, I'll just apologize. Apparently there should be something up there and I missed the deadline. Sorry about that. So, but you know what, I wanted to say a couple things before I get to the quotes is, I pulled up my notes from last year, and I'm going to say the same thing that I said last January, is wit and wisdom. Great Minds is the company, but Wit and Wisdom is raising the bar for our students. It's continuing to do that. Is it hard work, what Amy said? It is, and I see that every day at the school I'm at and when I visit with the other schools. So, and I just wanted, again, if this is new or you just need to think about this again, Wit and Wisdom provides complex grade level texts that is building background knowledge, vocabulary skills to help our our readers, to help our students to be deep readers. We're providing a wide range of full-length text to build knowledge of the world and ideas. And why I say that was when I surveyed the teachers and the students, we talked about building knowledge texts. The first module, we had the Middle Ages, and the second module now we're in Code Talkers, which is about the Navajo code talkers from World War II, and the students will be reading Farewell to Manzanar, which is about the Japanese internment. And if you didn't know, we had an internment area in North Dakota. So it's relevant, it's that world background knowledge. So the other thing that another teacher talked about, collaboration and academic discussions. So wit and wisdom is super strong in that student discourse piece, which we know is so important. Teachers like to talk, but we don't want them all to be talking the whole time. We want our students to be think, pair, share. That's a strategy that used a lot. So we want them talking academic talk. Now, is that something that has to be practiced and modeled? Modeled and practiced? Absolutely. Right? Because if you're like Carla, I want to be talking about a basketball game, but if I was in a classroom today in Mrs. Pullum's 6th grade and they were having an academic conversation and it's a short snippet and the students are talking and then they come back together. So this curriculum over and over again talks about that, and we know how important student discourse is. But I do have to share a couple quotes now. When I read through them, they're 7th graders, right? And we love that, right? But here's one student who really referenced student discourse. I think wit and wisdom gives us a chance to do a lot more writing. And notice and wonder, which is a strategy that they use in 6th, 7th, and 8th, is if you're looking at an article, you're looking at a video or that, what do you notice? And sometimes we don't always notice all the details, so they talk about it. And then what do you wonder about that? And so it gets them talking about that. So, and notice and wonder, let us consider our ideas and answers with others. So it's not just the teacher talking, it's our students talking. And then here's a couple quotes about the importance of these texts, these complex texts about the history and the science and different other curricular areas. I really like the books we're reading this year, and my favorite one is The Midwife's Apprentice. Again, this is from the Middle Ages, because it shows one person's action can lead to something good or bad. The other book is the one we're reading right now, which is Code Talkers, because it shows the hardships that the code talkers and the people in the war had to go through. And can you hear the empathy in that? So again, it's just so intertwined in that. One more, the best thing I like about Wit and Wisdom is it teaches me about all the things that happened in history and slowly helps, again, 7th grader, and slowly helps improve my writing and reading. Here's a couple ones that I feel like Wit and Wisdom doesn't really help me learn, but it helps me remember things. Okay. So obviously they're learning, right? I like the books that we've read so far. They're interesting and they help me learn about the past. And then I have to finish with this one because this is a true 7th grader. I feel good about the books, lots of books I've never seen before. So it's pretty cool. Of course I'm learning. This is school, for goodness sakes. But yeah, I'm learning. So there's a few notes from our 7th graders and teachers. So.
Thank you, Carla. So the unique part of Wit and Wisdom and what makes it transition from previous where we did things like novel studies is it's a knowledge building curriculum. And what that means is kids do not have to enter the school door with a base of knowledge to be successful. So I'll go back and give an example from Miss Pullum's room. I was in there and they were talking about, they had read the novel Bud Not Buddy. They had watched a film of the auto strikes. They looked at pictures from the Kentucky flood, and they also read short poems about struggle. So their essential question was, in a sense, how does struggle that you experience in the moment help you become a better person? And in this lesson, they were taking all of those components, and they were having a Socratic seminar. So they were saying, Terry would have said, gosh, I really think in Bud Not Buddy, in that first first chapter when XYZ happened, that's why it helped him become a better person. And the next sixth grader, mind you, would say, I agree with Terry, because when we looked at the pictures of the Kentucky flood and we saw all of those people on top of their houses, and then 6 months later we saw them rebuilding their community and how they came together to be stronger, we just all kind of sat back and went, this is why. No one had to walk through that door with information about their vacation to Florida. No one had to walk through that door knowing about the Kentucky Derby. No one had to walk through that door knowing about auto manufacturing. All of them had an opportunity to learn, to participate, and critically think. That's what a knowledge-building curriculum does. Is it hard? Yes. And that's why continued support is going to be essential throughout this adoption. So when we look at Ed Reports, we don't just kind of take our word for it. One of the resources we use is Ed Reports. This is an organization in which you can submit your curriculum resources to be evaluated. And what they look at is they look at the 3 gateways in which are needed to have a successful curriculum. So when we pull up on their website, anyone can go to Ed Reports, enter Wit and Wisdom. All of the 7th and 8th grade components, or those gateways, were met as in meeting expectations. You can't get higher than meeting expectations. So it was really affirmation that we're on the right track, producing the right curricular resources for students and teachers to use. Johns Hopkins also did a study, and Wit and Wisdom was one of the curriculums that they would recommend as you transition to the science of reading. They, of course, align with the North Dakota state standards. And the next and last slide that I'll talk about today is the expenditure. So when we look at this adoption, our typical adoption is 7 years, but as we're not in a full ELA adoption, we thought if we stretch this one a tiny bit, then we can get this group on that 7-year cycle. And so the total expenditure is $184,966.89 for 9 years, which on average is $36.78 per student per year. The 8th grade side is $163,236.26 for $32.65 per year. Here's that line that I highlighted earlier. We're also asking for a $50,000 expenditure, not in 1 year, but over the course of the adoption to continue to support teachers. What do you need today? What do you need tomorrow? What do you need 2 years from now? So the total adoption would be $398,203.15. So we're at the point where we're ready for more questions. And then tonight we're asking for discussion and action so we can continue the great work that we've started throughout the course of that 6th grade adoption.
Thank you very much. Is there any, or are there any questions? Go ahead, Dr. Lund.
In looking at this, Wit and Wisdom is a K-8 curriculum. Is there thoughts to, this will be adding 7 and 8 to 6. Are there thoughts about K through 5 since it's a K-8 curriculum?
So we have a K-5 research committee that started this year. The first half of the year they spent exploring what's out there, and now they're to the part where actually starting next week, I believe, they'll meet with vendors and they'll get the resources down to 2 in which they want to pilot in the fall of 24. And Wit and Wisdom is one of those resources.
I'll just piggyback off of that, and then Cynthia, how is really great reading different from piloting a new curriculum like Wit and Wisdom? Yep, good question. Really great reading is the phonics component, so understanding how letters and sounds go together and how you manipulate those to decode words. Okay. So when you think Scarborough is rope, Scarborough is a researcher, that fits the bottom part of the rope where we're decoding words, and Wit and Wisdom is the top part of the rope, that language comprehension piece. Good question. It's interesting that someone named Scarborough was responsible for a phonics program. But exactly. Go ahead, Cynthia.
On the previous slide with the 8-year, 9-year adoption, can you just remind us what that means, please?
Yes, so 9 years would be finishing out the current year for 7th grade, and 8 years would be starting next year for 8th grade. So they did a pilot where they have the first 2 modules. What's interesting about like a FOSS science adoption, they can send you a kit to try, where a wit and wisdom adoption, even though you're piloted, you invest because all of the trade books. They can't send you the trade books and then you send them back and they send them to someone else. So they've had modules 1 and 2 that they've been trying through the pilot, and then now looking at modules 3 and 4 to finish out the year through the adoption.
Other questions? Go ahead.
So I know 6th and 7th grade, they have 2 sections of reading every day because that's how 6th and 7th grade works. 8th grade is not set up that way. So is 8th grade staying that way so they're not losing? I just had some people a little concerned classes are going to disappear in 8th grade, so.
So we worked with the 8th grade teachers. We also worked with Greater Minds, which is the company for Wit and Wisdom, and they helped us design an abbreviated plan. So it'll be part of Module 1, all of Module 2, all of Module 3.
Other questions? Go ahead, Monty.
Thank you, ladies. A question and then a comment. So the 398, that's for the next, essentially the next while for grades 6, 7, and 8, right?
Correct. And so it won't be an all upfront expenditure either. So what we've done is some negotiating with Great Minds where we'll pay for the teacher's manuals and then the trade books and the novels. But then over time, we'll spread out that consumable digital online access piece over the course of the adoption.
I think, I really appreciate and like that you have professional development money built into the budget. I think that's a key component of taking on this massive undertaking, right? Like you talked about, Amy, it was a great comparison. Asked me to run a marathon today, we'd be dogging it around the building, you're right.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Second, you didn't use these words, but having had children come through the system, I think the fact that the consistency that would be present in those curriculums, you can't speak enough about that, so that students know what to expect when they walk in those doors. I think because we haven't had an adopted curriculum in English, it's really always interesting to see what happens in that particular English classroom. And without saying anything, but I appreciate that. I also think that this component that you spoke of earlier teaches critical thinking and the whole notion of notice and wonder, like using those critical thinking skills to look at a situation and pull out of that picture or topic, whatever you're talking about. But having students really dig into that, that's really important in today's society, right? Especially with AI and how that's going to alter images and deep fakes and all that information that's going to be coming at them and affecting their lives in ways that we cannot guess today. I think that's so important in every curriculum to have critical thinking components at the heart of that. And so I applaud any curriculum that's going to be helping and consistently teaching that to our students.
I just wanted to add that, as I mentioned in Friday Focus a few weeks ago, Amy Barch has set up learning walks for Amy, for Terry, for Catherine, for Matt. And a few weeks ago, we were at South Middle School, and we were in 7th grade classrooms. And I was kneeling down next to kids, and they were doing the code talking. They were engaged in the code talking book, and 3 out of the 5 students did not want me to interrupt them to ask them what they were doing. So it's happening. It's great. Thank you, ladies.
Go ahead.
I didn't go through this program, obviously, when I was in middle school. But now I take an AP literature class, and it involves a lot of reading between the lines, not just you read, like we're reading Shakespearean sonnets, and you can guess how hard that can be. And not just reading the sonnet itself, but looking in between the lines to find a deeper meaning, like Ms. Gockler was saying. Using those critical thinking skills, and I think is going to be really valuable for kids when they walk into those doors at Central or at River or whatever high school they go to. So I think it's really valuable what they're doing.
Dr. Lund?
Just a quick clarification or question. this 398,000 adoption, is it for 6th, 7th, and 8th, or is it just for 7th and 8th?
Just for 7th and 8th, the amount that you approved last year was for 6 to get them through that time in totality.
I move approval of the adoption as outlined.
Okay, we have a motion by Dr. Lunn, a second by Dr. Shab. I just had a quick question. You named the challenging component, and is there research or is there a thought process behind, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are on social media, a lot of them are, and they're reading like this all the time. And so it feels a little challenging because I'm used to the quick reads. I'm used to skimming. I mean, where does that come into play in terms of, how people are learning, what they're seeing, what they're doing, and then what you're trying to actually teach in the classroom?
I think that's part of the scaffolding that's provided. So like Carla talked about how all of these core texts are at grade level or above. And what we know is not yet are all of our readers able to consume or decode text at grade level. So what you see when you walk into these classrooms is teachers providing that type of scaffold, whether it's them reading aloud and the text is on the screen, or if they're listening to someone else retell the story and following along with the text. We've also provided some accommodations, of course, for students who need the visual assistance on iPads so we can make things larger. But typically, right now, it's not available to buy the digital components of these texts through this company, so they are the paper copies. But those scaffolds have been pretty well used throughout all the classrooms.
I actually support keeping the paper copies. I'm not on the committee. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Go ahead.
Something triggered. Was this used this summer at Valley at all?
They use the RISE curriculum, which is part of Lavinia's work. It's a company that they have contracted with as part of their title and comprehensive support.
I listened to a group of students talk about that, and it seemed like it was really pushing for critical thinking as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so part of the Lavinia curriculum was a lot of close reads, where exactly what Ryan talked about is that you read and then you have to find the key components. How do you know that? What evidence of the text supported your claim? All of that work. So same concept, for sure.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to item D, consideration of snow removal contract and remainder of 2023-2024 school year. Brandon?
Yeah, Chairperson Flynn, members of the board, appreciate the opportunity to bring this one forward. Back in October is when we had brought back the results for the snow removal bid. At the time, R&R Sand and Gravel was chosen, and up until this point has shown that they were unable to meet the needs of the district. And both parties came together around that and have mutually agreed to release from contract and move on. We then, to ensure continuity between contracts, had gone back to those bid results and reapproached the conversation with Fertilon. They provided some interim service here, including all that ice removal, have done a great job, and what administration's recommending is that we approve the attached contract for M&W services, or also known as Fertilon, as our snow removal vendor for the remainder of this school year.
Any questions? Seek a motion for approval. I heard Jeff first. Is there a second? Bill? Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. And item D is the Finance Committee report. Bill, do you want to give a high-level overview and then can move on to the other items?
We did have our meeting, and Brandon went through it for us, and I think it would be easier just to have him walk through it and me to summarize and tell us what we thought. But it was also on the couple of our projects that we are going into, and I think one of the bigger points is when he gets to it, I'll comment more on, is the change orders when we get into that part of it. So but I don't think that's first on the agenda, so I'll let Brandon start out with it.
I appreciate the opportunity. The Finance Committee report it's constituted, if you can see on the agenda, 5 items here, action items to follow. So we'll just kind of take them in the order, just starting, and you'll see that most of these pertain to the Career Impact Academy as that project is well underway. So this is the first one here relative to a new market tax credit update. So on August 7th, the school board approved the guaranteed maximum price, or GMP is what I'll refer to it as well as the owner contingency for that project at $26.2 million. And at the time, we knew that there was still an existing gap in that project. And so, as promised, administration continued to look for sources to close that gap. A new market tax credit is one of those leading candidates of a program. Just as a quick overview of what that program is really, it's an incentive to drive growth into underdeveloped census tracts. The project happens to fall within there. And we had learned about the program. It essentially is the federal government driving value into these areas by providing a 39% tax incentive or tax credit to investing companies. So it's over a seven-year period of time. And this new market tax credit program will drive the investment into a shared pot with our own mixed monies to bring a little more value in. What we were looking at here is initially working with Dakota Business Lending and Bremer Bank, but it's a bit of a finicky program, and each year there's no guarantee of those organizations, they're called CDEs or Community Development Entities, that they are receiving tax credits directly from the federal government. They must compete for those. And so in October or late, or very early October, we had learned that those organizations we were working closely with did not receive any allocation. So we were concerned that our path to close the gap in our project had lost the opportunity. But since we worked with a few more organizations to help us get matched up with CDEs across the country that did receive allocation. So the update primarily today is to inform you that we've connected with Urban Research Park, CDE, they're out of Maryland, through work of our consultants, and they have allocation. They're still finalizing exactly what that total allocation will be. We've modeled some of the numbers here off of a $20 million allocation. That number doesn't mean a lot to our project. Ultimately, what that number does boil down to, if we were to receive or firm up that $20 million in tax credit allocation for our project, is $3.16 million for our project. So again, that value is created by the federal government incentivizing organizations, often large banks, to invest into project areas such as these. So it's an exciting update because really, as you can see by the cover memo here, it helps close that existing gap and get us just a little bit closer to where we need to be on that project. Ultimately, with this new market tax credit, we'd be driving towards a closing of those finances middle March. And so there'll be a lot more work that we'll be keeping you informed of and a little bit more detail as far as how the new market tax credit goes. But it's really exciting development to having been working with that organization and with the anticipation of finding out exactly how much allocation we'll get soon.
I think one thing to add too is there's 2 school districts within the state of North Dakota has used this program. So we're not the first one that are doing it. And I think that was Wahpeton and Minnewacan.
That's right. Yeah, so there's some precedents in North Dakota, and it's certainly a big industry around the country that drives value into some great projects, great locations around the country. So that was primarily just an update on this agenda item, no action requested here. And I can keep going here too. Yeah. So the next item here too is just to correct an error that happened a little bit early on when the board approved the GMP and the associated owner's contingency on the project, the Career Impact Academy project. There was some anticipated sales tax that was assumed by the contractors to not be included. It was miscommunication. They thought we were pursuing an exemption on that, and ultimately it didn't account for about $670,000 that will be anticipated for sales tax into that project. And so the request here is to just adjust the budget to get that included in that GMP, bringing that total construction project up to, with a contingency of $26.9 million. So in this case, there's action requested. Both the Finance Committee and administrative recommendations to approve the construction GMP of $26.653859 and a 5% contingency associated with that with about $1.3 million. And attached is an adjusted budget for the project.
I move that we approve the amended GMP and contingency as outlined in the memorandum.
We have a motion by Dave, a second by Dr. Shab. Is there any discussion? Go ahead.
How does this affect the budget? I mean, it's not a real small number, so how does it affect the budget potentially?
Well, it's moving up that cost that we anticipate of $670,000, and that's for the GMP. One important distinction is the owner contingency that's associated with this. I've mentioned it a couple times, but that's setting aside 5% for different changes that could come in. That is really up to the discretion of the owner of the project. There's also a contingency held by the construction company, so if there's any adjustments that need to be made due to a decision they made or design flaw from the architects, that's handled within their contingency. If we don't use that contingency, that will more than cover this here, but really this should have been included in that GMP from the start.
Go ahead.
Just a follow-up question. I understand that. My question is, okay, we use all the contingency, then somewhere in the budget, we're going to have to come up with $600,000+ to cover this. If we happen to use all of our contingency, we would have to make a budget adjustment at some point down the road.
Yeah.
Right, and so to clarify my understanding of your question, and what I think is worth pointing out is, we could have put this into our owner contingency and handled it that way, but that would have certainly eaten up that flexibility of your budget for contingency for the rest of the project that's only just coming out of the ground. Rather, we're going this route to be upfront about that GMP adjustment so we can have plenty of contingency left for the rest of the project.
So effectively, with the new market tax credit, we're closing the gap. And then with this addition, we add on to it a little bit more, but we're hopeful that we can close it, the rest of it, at some point. We have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next is consideration of Career Impact Academy expenses to be paid from the building fund.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson Flynn. So per North Dakota Century Code, a building fund can be used for a certain set of things, including the construction of a school district buildings or facilities. The building fund's in a perfectly appropriate place for your construction project to take place from in our fund accounting system. Furthermore, should you want to use the building fund for really anything at all, you need expressed permission from the board of directors to do so. So today, my request is to do this as alignment of really where I think those funds should be paid from. It's important to note it doesn't change the sources and uses or amount of money for the project. It's just a matter of accounting out of which fund we're going to take that from, the general fund or the building fund. So my request is to really align it with where I think it should be, more of accounting purposes than anything. The Finance Committee and administrative recommendations to approve the total project expenses of $26.936552 for the construction of the Career Impact Academy to be paid from the building fund.
Any questions? Okay. Is there a motion for approval? Motion by Bill. Is there a second? Second by Jeff. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item is the consideration of initial resolution for general obligation building fund bonds for Career Impact Academy. Brandon?
Thank you. So then in the Finance Committee, we took the conversation then and turned the attention towards that project gap that still exists in the budget for that one. So to close that final portion, what we're proposing is to move forward with the initial resolution for general obligation building fund bonds, as it's related to the fund you just voted on. If adopted, it would start a 60-day protest period where anybody could voice any protest to that. And if no protest is received, or a 5% margin of the total assessed value of our district, if not enough protest is received, then the board would then have some flexibility in how we may address that gap, including then the permission from the public to sell bonds out of the building fund to cover that gap at a market rate, or apply for the school construction loan program that's made available through the state and administered by the Bank of North Dakota. And that's 2% money versus what market might be of 4 to 4.5%. So this decision would put the board in a position, and the administration the ability to complete an application to that fund, which they only receive applications once a year, deadline being April 1 of each year. So ultimately, administrative recommendations to do this to provide flexibility should we need to close the gap with these financing measures. It should be noted that the work continues on closing the gap in other ways with all the community partners involved. So that won't relent. We'll continue on that effort. This would just give us the ability to exercise options when or if we should need that.
Any questions? Do I have a motion for approval? Motion by Monty, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Consideration of change order process for projects. Brandon?
Well, I guess this is one that I had brought up to Brandon a while ago, and it was same process we've used at the Park District when I was employed there. But what it does is has a committee, and we're thinking the finance committee would be that committee that would work with the administration, that if there is a change order, instead of calling a meeting of the whole board or waiting 2 weeks to meet with the board to pass those change orders, we can move them forward quicker. And we all understand that the supply change that we're living in today's world is so slow. You know, a larger change order might slow down the whole project, and I think we want to keep all these projects on, and we're going to have 3 or 4 projects going at the same time, so it just makes sense to do the memorandum that Brandon put together of how we would do it. The committee owner would take it over to 50, and under that, the board or the administration can move it forward. It still comes back to the board to let us know what's going on, so it's not spending money on our own, but it's just keeping the process moving quicker.
And only one more comment to offer, if I may, is that this would still be within budget or what was approved for the GMP and the contingency. If anything were to change that dramatically, of course, that would come back to the board. This is just adding some of that flexibility to react to those timely issues of change orders as they come up.
Is there a motion for approval? Oh, go ahead.
Sure, I'll motion
Okay.
or approve it.
Motion by Dr. Lund, second by Dr. Schab. Is there any discussion? Go ahead.
Just a quick comment. I'm just assuming the brilliant minds on the finance committee, if there's anything controversial, they'll bring it to the full board. Because, I mean, it just says over 50,000. It could be the whole GM. I mean, you could throw it in one change order. You could put 800,000. So I'm assuming you smart people on the finance committee will bring it to the board if there's anything semi-controversial at all.
Yeah, I think we had a more lengthy discussion about this, just kind of understanding what it is, but I don't think it would be like the government writing in free sandwiches for everyone with the change order. So I think that made us feel a little more comfortable that we can help be that body. So, but thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any more questions? Okay. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. It was a long finance committee with some updates, but good progress moving forward, and we are overall really excited about that. Next is the consideration of resolution authorizing school construction loan applications. Brandon?
Yeah, thank you once again. As I mentioned, that 60-day protest period on the Career Impact Academy project is an example. Once you do want to apply for the school construction loan, You need board permission to do so and to complete that application. What you have here is a request to do exactly that for the Career Impact Academy, but also to apply on behalf of the Guaranteed Energy Savings Program, which is another way of saying how we've been working to air condition the school district. Half of that project scope fell within this past summer, and the other half will fall next summer. There was always a component of that where the energy savings from that would be bonded, or the guaranteed energy savings over future years would be bonded to bring that money forward and pay for the project. We just hadn't taken that action yet. In both cases, you can't apply for the school construction loan program until that 60-day period is initiated. So now with the recent action here tonight, the application can be submitted on behalf of both projects and get into the queue for the April 1st deadline. So in this case, the recommendation from the Finance Committee and administration is recommending the adoption of the resolution authorizing school construction loan application.
Is there a motion? Motion by Dr. Shab, second by Dr. Lund. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item is the consideration of joint powers agreement with Grand Forks County for election services. Brandon?
I was just thinking how it's probably much more interesting to listen to folks at the podium than
I'm just hoping the protest period means everyone's on the lawn, they have to stand outside, 2/3 of the voting population.
You're right. I hope it's not that exciting.
You can go to the podium if you think it'll help.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. My last item here tonight, and I appreciate the time, is consideration of that JPA. Every other year as we enter into the election, we have had an agreement with the county to provide services for those elections. This agreement sets forth the parameters of that relationship. It also points out here an automatic renewal for annual terms commencing on the first day of January, ending December 31st, unless either party notifies. So we're hoping to streamline this relationship a little bit, that it doesn't need to be expressly approved each and every year. But I would consider this to be routine business for when it comes to a standard election year. So in this case, the administrative recommendation is to approve the joint powers agreement with the Grand Forks County for a school district selection.
Any questions? I thought Dave was going to ask you to show the how to make a bill video, but he didn't. I'll seek a motion for approval. Motion by Monty, is there a second? Second by Jeff. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We now are on to announcements. Any announcements? Go ahead.
Well, board members, January is National School Boards Month, and I don't know that our general public knows how much time you invest in our teachers and our support staff and in our students. I think back to last spring, some of you were on multiple negotiation teams. I think one person was on all four, if I remember correctly, and he's actually signed up for it. But just the amount of time that you invest in the school district is remarkable, between negotiations, finance committee, policy committee, et cetera. I just don't know that people understand that. And you do it all as some of the lowest paid board members in the state of North Dakota, particularly in the large school districts. So what you have in front of you is just a note of appreciation and gratitude. You've got something that you can take home if you don't want to eat it. I'm sure somebody in your household will do that for you. So thank you on behalf of the entire school district and community for your service, dedication, and commitment to Grand Forks and Grand Forks Air Force Base Schools. Thank you.
Yay. Yes, go ahead.
Off of what Dr. Brenner is saying, those of you that have been able to get out to the schools, I know it doesn't always work with everyone's job, but the teachers definitely notice and really do appreciate anytime you guys are able to show up for activities and things, or just to stop by the school. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your service and dedication to our school board and the students within our district. Any board requests for future considerations? Go ahead, Cynthia.
Couple. I'd like to learn more about the Therapeutic Learning Center. And then I personally know that there's been a lot of multilingual updates for the district, but I don't know that everybody knows that. So I think it would be helpful to share what's going on because the numbers are high and our teachers have expressed some taxing. So multilingual updates, please.
Okay. Josh, how do we do with the school board norms?
I think we did very well.
Good. Okay. Well, that is the, not the end, but just before the end of our meeting. I don't know, what's the end, the pre-end. We are going into executive session, so are we moving?
We'll need a motion here.
Okay.
To go into executive session. Hang on, I'll get you something.
Thank you. 1 second. Thank you. And are we staying in here or we're going, okay. So at this time, I would ask for a motion to hold an executive session to discuss suspension of Naneka Nwakafor while discharged for causes pursued as allowed by North Dakota Century Code 15.1-15-10. Okay, motion by Jeff. Is there a second? Second by Josh. Assuming a roll call, or do we have to call a roll call yet, or just Cindy?
Yes.
Okay, well, assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We will now ask the members of the public who are attending the meeting to leave the room. Actually, we will leave the room. So you can stay and we'll come back in 5-10 minutes. We anticipate adjourning the executive session and reconvening the open portion of the meeting at approximately 7:25 p.m.
Just a quick question for the public. Are we doing any other business besides adjourning once we come back?
No, we are not. Mhm. So for those students who are here for assignment, you can leave because we are just adjourning the meeting when we come back. So